At that time, our relationship was going through a tough period. A lot of pressure was coming at us from all directions, and things felt very heavy. But instead of falling apart, we started to support each other more. We really began to take care of one another. We ended up doing 72 episodes of the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour. CBS, the network that aired the show, had very strict rules about what could be shown. Every single second of the show had to be reviewed. Every word spoken was checked for anything that might cause controversy. But on one episode, September 17, 1967, something slipped past the censors. No one noticed it in time, not the people reviewing the footage, not the director, and not even the Smothers Brothers themselves. During a performance by the rock band The Who, a camera accidentally caught something unexpected in the background. That moment gave proof of something many people had guessed for a long time but couldn't confirm, until that night. The story of the Smothers Brothers began with personal tragedy. Their father, Major Thomas B. Smothers Jr., was an officer in the U.S. Army. In 1941, during World War II, he was stationed in the Philippines when Japan invaded. His wife Ruth and their 2 sons were sent away for safety. But Major Smothers was captured by Japanese forces. He survived the brutal Bataan Death March, a long and deadly forced march where many prisoners died from exhaustion, starvation, and abuse. Later, he was sent to a prison camp in Japan called Fukuoka No. 22, which was known for its terrible conditions. By April 1945, the war was almost over, and he had become too weak to work. On April 25, he was moved from Japan to Korea. He never made it. Some reports say he was buried at sea. Others say he was cremated in Korea. Of the 110 prisoners transferred with him, only 36 survived. He was the last one to die on that journey. Ruth was left alone to raise Tom, born in 1937, and Dick, born in 1938. She worked long hours to support her family, and life was very hard. That pain and hardship later influenced the brothers' unique style of comedy. Their comedy career began in 1959 at a small club in San Francisco called the Purple Onion. They were only supposed to perform for 2 weeks, but audiences loved them so much that they stayed for 36 weeks. People were drawn to their mix of folk music and funny stories. One night, a flamenco dancer scheduled to perform got hurt, and Tom and Dick filled in. That unexpected moment showed how talented and entertaining they were. By the end of their time at the club, they were making $2,000 a week, a huge jump from the $2 a night they used to earn. In 1961, they released their first comedy record, The Smothers Brothers at the Purple Onion, which helped launch their career. Before that success, they had been part of a college music group Tom formed called the Casual Quintet. Tom played the guitar, and Dick learned to play bass just to join. The other members eventually left, but Tom and Dick stayed together. They began joking between songs to fill time during their performances, and people laughed. That was the beginning of their signature style, brotherly teasing mixed with music. On stage, Tom played the innocent, silly brother while Dick acted like the serious, annoyed one. They would argue, and Tom would say, "Mom always liked you best," which made audiences laugh every time. Their comedy felt real and honest because it came from their real-life relationship. By the mid-1960s, CBS was struggling to compete with NBC's popular show Bonanza on Sunday nights. Bonanza had a huge audience and had already pushed other CBS shows out of the time slot. Desperate to attract a younger crowd, CBS took a chance on the Smothers Brothers. They were funny, intelligent, and different. CBS hoped they could help the network become cool again. The Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour premiered on February 5, 1967. At first, it seemed like a regular variety show. Even Ed Sullivan introduced them as typical American kids. But within a few episodes, it became clear that they were not typical at all. They used comedy to talk about serious issues, like the Vietnam War and politics. They pushed boundaries every week, and people loved it. Within 2 weeks, their ratings were higher than Bonanza's. Young viewers tuned in, and advertisers were happy. Before the show started, Tom had demanded total creative control. CBS agreed because they were desperate for a hit. This gave the brothers the power to say what they wanted. They invited guests like folk singer Pete Seeger, who sang anti-war songs, and they even made jokes about President Lyndon B. Johnson. Every episode felt risky and exciting. Of course, CBS censors were not happy. They often tried to cut out controversial parts, but the brothers didn't give up. Sometimes, they even made fun of the censorship on the show itself. Their team of writers included young talents like Steve Martin, Rob Reiner, Lorne Michaels, and David Steinberg. These writers went on to shape the future of American comedy, including shows like Saturday Night Live, All in the Family, and The Mary Tyler Moore Show. In October 1968, the show aired something groundbreaking: the Beatles' promotional film for Hey Jude. This was the first time American viewers saw this kind of video, what we now call a music video. The next week, they showed another Beatles film, Revolution. No other TV show had access to this kind of content. It felt like a major change in both music and television. In 1967, Pete Seeger was finally allowed back on TV after being blacklisted for 17 years. When he sang Waist Deep in the Big Muddy, it was clearly criticizing the Vietnam War and President Johnson's policies. CBS cut the performance at first, but Tom Smothers fought back and told the press. Public support forced the network to air it uncensored in February 1968. The show also featured performances from bands that were considered too rebellious for TV, like The Who, The Doors, Jefferson Airplane, Buffalo Springfield, and Steppenwolf. The Who ended one performance by smashing their instruments and setting off explosives inside drummer Keith Moon's kit. The blast injured Moon and damaged guitarist Pete Townshend's hearing, an injury that affected him for the rest of his life. During the chaos, Townsend even grabbed Tom Smothers' acoustic guitar and smashed it on stage. Tom stood there, shocked. It became one of the most iconic moments in rock history. Older viewers were horrified. Younger fans loved it. The divide between generations was clear, and that was exactly what the Smothers Brothers wanted. Other artists also used the show to speak out. Joan Baez, known for her peace activism, wanted to dedicate a song to her husband David Harris, who was going to prison for refusing to be drafted into the Vietnam War. CBS censored her message, only allowing a vague dedication. CBS was under pressure. President Johnson had even stayed up until 3 a.m. to call CBS and demand that they rein in the Smothers Brothers. When Richard Nixon took office, he pushed even harder. In 1968, the show filmed a powerful segment with singer Harry Belafonte. He sang "Don't Stop the Carnival," while footage played of police attacking protesters at the Democratic National Convention. CBS refused to air the segment and later sold the 5 minutes of footage to the Republican Party to use for political ads. In the end, CBS canceled the show in 1969, saying it was too controversial. But what the Smothers Brothers did changed TV forever. They made room for protest, music, and comedy to exist in the same place. They gave a voice to artists, musicians, and writers who were pushing for change. Their legacy still lives on in modern comedy and television. The Smothers Brothers originally wanted to use their TV show to speak out against political violence. But instead, their protest was turned into a promotion for the same politicians they were criticizing. It was obvious the TV network, CBS, didn't support them. By late 1968, CBS started to tighten control over their show. Every script, joke, song lyric, and even full recordings had to be reviewed well in advance. This wasn't just a routine check. Censors examined every word, looking for anything political, especially topics like the Vietnam War or religion. Even harmless jokes could be flagged. Guests with bold or edgy humor were sometimes censored or completely cut from the show. CBS gave the brothers a strict rule: submit every show at least 10 days before it aired. This was meant to stop them from making last-minute changes that challenged boundaries. The writers found themselves stuck in an endless loop, writing, submitting, revising, and repeating. CBS often demanded changes right before airtime. Writers joked that it felt like death by 1,000 cuts, and sadly, it wasn't far from the truth. One day, Tom and Dick decided to push back. They made a sketch where Tom played a censor who cut scripts with giant scissors and interrupted actors mid-sentence. The joke was simple but powerful. Their voices were being silenced. The final shot of the sketch was total silence. CBS refused to air it. Internal documents later showed that CBS thought the sketch made them look bad. A similar sketch with comedian Elaine May was also pulled. Her last line was, "If we're not allowed to say anything important, we're just fooling you with empty jokes." That hit hard. Tom was furious. Now, even making fun of censorship was being censored. The brothers started playing a game with CBS. They would send in a clean version of the show for review, but sometimes they'd secretly swap it out with a more daring version right before broadcast. CBS got fed up and accused them of violating their contract. In April 1969, CBS cancelled the show. They claimed the brothers had missed a deadline, even though CBS was partly at fault for the delays. The show was still one of the most popular in America, but it was pulled anyway. The real issue wasn't about timing, it was about control. Tom later said CBS was trying to silence their voice completely. The cancellation made national news. The New York Times published a tough editorial saying CBS was holding the Smothers Brothers hostage to their own creativity. The public reacted quickly. People sent letters and organized protests. Politicians and artists spoke out in support. The issue grew larger than just one show. It became a symbol of the fight for free speech on television. CBS executives were worried. They had meetings to control the damage. The Smothers Brothers refused to back down. Tom said it clearly, "They're not just shutting down our show, they're trying to shut down the truth." Their fight became a major moment in TV history. At the same time, CBS had another problem. Sponsors. Companies like Ford and Procter & Gamble began pulling their ads. They didn't want to be linked to a show with strong political messages. CBS lost millions in advertising. Internal memos later revealed that fear of losing sponsors was one of the main reasons the show got cancelled. The message was clear: if you spoke too freely, you would pay the price. One particular joke pushed things too far. In March 1969, Dick did an impression of President Nixon and joked, "I'll end the Vietnam War as soon as I can find the off button." It was clever and honest, but it made CBS and their sponsors nervous. The war was still a sensitive topic. That joke might have been the final straw. On April 4, 1969, CBS cancelled the show. The reason they gave was a missed deadline, but everyone knew it was political. The show was supposed to return for another season. It had already been renewed. One episode that was already taped, featuring David Steinberg with another anti-war joke, never aired in the US. It only aired in Canada. The cancellation was sudden and harsh. It sent a warning to other performers: don't cross the line or you'll be next. The brothers didn't give up. They sued CBS for breaking their contract. The legal battle lasted 4 years. In 1973, they won. The judge awarded them over $770,000, about $5.5 million in today's money. It was a big win and set a legal example. A network couldn't use censorship as a false excuse to cancel a show. But even though they won in court, the brothers had already lost their platform. Nothing they did afterward ever matched the success of their original show. They tried a softer version on NBC, but it didn't catch on. CBS moved on quickly. In June 1969, just months after canceling the Smothers Brothers, they launched Hee Haw, a light, country-themed comedy show with no politics or controversy. It ran for 23 seasons. It was exactly the kind of safe content CBS wanted. Tom took the cancellation especially hard. He later admitted that it left him feeling empty and broke his confidence. Dick focused on other things, like car racing and winemaking, to cope. The experience left emotional scars on both of them. In 1970, they tried again with ABC, but times had changed. The Vietnam War was winding down, and audiences weren't as interested in rebellious humor. ABC also kept them on a tight leash. The show didn't last. In 1975, they made another attempt, this time on NBC. The first episode was a hit, reaching millions of viewers. But behind the scenes, there were problems. The producer clashed with the brothers. Tom wasn't even allowed to reshoot scenes without losing pay. They couldn't freely talk to writers or the press. Ratings dropped. NBC gave Tom full control of the last few episodes, and the show got daring again, with jokes about cocaine and appearances by Ringo Starr and George Carlin. But it wasn't enough. NBC cancelled the show halfway through the season. Then, in 1988, something unexpected happened. CBS invited the Smothers Brothers back for a 1-hour reunion special. It was called the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour, the 20th reunion. It was nominated for 3 Emmy Awards and featured old writers like Steve Martin. The show was warm and nostalgic, but safe. It lacked the original spark. Still, CBS followed up with a full revival of the series. The timing was odd because the Writers Guild was on strike, so they reused old material. When the strike ended, they got new scripts, and the ratings slightly improved. The revival earned 5 Emmy nominations, but it only lasted 2 seasons. TV had changed, and the revival couldn't capture the old magic. In 2022, their legacy was officially preserved. UC Santa Barbara accepted their full archive, contracts, music sheets, videos, photos, and legal records. David Suber, the collection curator, said the brothers' work deserved to be remembered alongside national treasures. Their fight for free speech and bold comedy still influences television today. The Smothers Brothers were pioneers. Long before Saturday Night Live, they were using comedy to speak out. From 1967 to 1969, they made bold jokes about war, censorship, and politicians. Future legends like Lorne Michaels, who created SNL, Steve Martin, Rob Reiner, and George Carlin all got their start with them. Many comedians later said they owed their careers to the brothers. Their show gave artists a place to take risks, and that changed American comedy forever. When CBS canceled their show in 1969, even though it was a hit, the brothers didn't stay silent. They went to court and won. It was a historic victory for creative freedom. Their show came at a time when the US was deeply divided by war and civil rights issues. They gave a voice to the counterculture, bringing on musical guests like The Who, Jefferson Airplane, Simon and Garfunkel, and Pete Seeger. They even aired new Beatles videos. For many viewers, it was their first look at the Cultural Revolution. As Bill Maher once said, the Smothers Brothers weren't trying to please everyone. They were willing to challenge people, make them uncomfortable, and tell the truth. That made them special. Even after their show ended, their impact remained, and still matters today.